The city was still buzzing from the launch. My face was on billboards, my voice echoed through the auditorium hours after I'd left, and the tech blogs were already calling it the most disruptive innovation of the year. Normally, nights like this would end with champagne, soft jazz in my penthouse, and the illusion of peace. But tonight, something pulled me elsewhere. Traffic was thick around Midtown, so my driver took a side route, cutting through a part of the city I hadn't seen in years. Gentrification hadn't reached these streets yet. There were no startups or neon signage here, just forgotten buildings, cracked sidewalks, and shadows that didn't move unless they had to. I wasn't paying attention at first. My mind was still in the boardroom, until the car slowed near an alleyway and I looked out the window. That's when I saw her. She was sitting on the ground, knees pulled to her chest, wrapped in a thin, dirty coat that looked more like paper than fabric. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale. Most people would have turned away, dismissed her as another statistic in the city's growing homelessness problem. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because her eyes, they stopped everything. Even through the grime and exhaustion, they held something sharp, something alive, and something else I hadn't felt in a very long time. Recognition. She looked right at me. Not like someone begging. Not like someone broken. But like someone who knew me. Like someone who once stood where I stood. Before the world took everything. I leaned forward instinctively, hand pressed to the glass. But before I could say anything, before I could even ask the driver to stop, the light changed. The car moved, and the alley slipped behind us like a forgotten dream. I didn't speak the rest of the ride. Couldn't. Her eyes stayed with me, burned into the back of my mind. They weren't the eyes of a stranger. They were the eyes of someone I had once known. Maybe even someone I had once loved. And in that moment, I knew, no matter what it took, I was going back. I couldn't shake her eyes from my mind. They followed me through the night, even in sleep, or whatever form of rest I managed to slip into. I had all the comfort in the world, a memory foam mattress, climate control, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the skyline. But none of it mattered. My thoughts had stayed behind, in that alley. The next morning, I canceled my meetings. I didn't call the office. I didn't even shave. I dressed plainly and left the penthouse before sunrise. This wasn't a business trip. I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to see. I stopped at a small corner store and bought a few things. A thick blanket, a thermos of hot tea, a couple of sandwiches, and a pair of knit gloves. The woman from last night had haunted me, and something in me, something old, something buried, refused to let her disappear again. When I arrived, the alley was just as I'd remembered. Still gray, still cold, still untouched by the city's glamour. And there she was. She sat in the same spot, legs tucked in, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her coat hadn't changed. Neither had her silence. But when I approached, her eyes lifted, and once again, they locked onto mine with that same unsettling calm. I didn't speak right away. I didn't want to scare her. I slowly knelt a few feet away and set the items down. "I brought you some things," I said gently. "Tea, food, something warm to wrap around you." She looked at the bag, then at me, hesitant. Her hands trembled as she reached out and took the thermos first. She didn't say thank you, but I didn't need her to. After a while, I asked, "What's your name?" Her gaze dropped. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, almost inaudibly, she said something. One word. "Pine Hill." It wasn't a name, but it hit me like a punch to the chest. Pine Hill. The name of the small town where I grew up. The place I hadn't spoken of in years. Where summer smelled like fresh-cut grass and rusted swings. Where my childhood existed before ambition drowned it out. And where, one unforgettable summer, I met a girl named Lena. My breath caught. The name buzzed in the back of my throat, but I didn't dare say it out loud. Not yet. I studied her face again, this time closer. The shape of her nose, the curve of her lips, the haunted softness in her eyes. Was it her? Was this really Lena? Or was fate just playing with my memory? Either way, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not until I found the truth. That night, I couldn't shake the weight of her eyes. The alley, her voice. That single word, Pine Hill, looped in my mind like a forgotten melody I used to hum in my sleep. I sat in the silence of my penthouse, the city buzzing far beneath me, too distant to feel real. Instead of pouring myself a scotch or opening emails, I walked to the cabinet in the hallway. A dusty wooden box sat inside, untouched for years. It was marked Camp Pine Hill, 1999. I pulled it down with careful hands. Inside were photo albums, crafts, a rusted whistle, and a folded note I instantly recognized from its faded purple ink. "I'll miss you more than stars miss the night." My throat tightened. She had written that. Lena. Flipping through the album, my fingers trembled. There she was. Messy hair, paint-stained shirt, that unstoppable smile, and there we were, 10 years old. Her arm around me, mine awkwardly at my side. There was this joy in her eyes I never saw again in anyone else. Innocent, wild, free. And then, one photo slipped out, fluttering to the floor like a leaf in autumn. I picked it up. Me and Lena sitting on the dock. Her hand was in mine. She was laughing. I was looking at her like she was the only thing that existed. Even at that age, it was written all over my face. She vanished after that summer. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. My parents said her family moved suddenly. Something about her father losing his job, but they never told me where. I'd tried searching for her once, years later, in college. But Lena wasn't on social media. No records. Like the world had swallowed her whole. Now she's on the streets. The woman in the alley. It had to be her. The way she looked at me. Like seeing a ghost from her past. Like part of her wanted to speak but couldn't trust her own voice. And Pine Hill. She said it like a breadcrumb left behind on purpose. I looked back at the photograph in my hand. "Where did you disappear to, Lena?" I whispered. And more importantly, why are you back now? The next day I found myself retracing my steps through the alleys without hesitation, like something inside me already knew where to go. The cold air bit at my skin, and the city's polished mask faded behind me with every step I took into this forgotten part of town. And there she was again, sitting in the same corner, wrapped in the blanket I'd left her, the paper cup untouched beside her, steam no longer rising from the tea. Her eyes were distant today, less guarded, but heavier somehow, as if the night had brought back more than sleep. I knelt beside her, unsure if words would help or only push her further into silence. "Hi," I offered gently. No answer, only the faintest shift of her gaze toward me, then away again. But something else caught my attention. Around her neck, tucked partially beneath her coat, was a necklace, old, rusted, barely held together by the chain. But the charm, a key, a tiny silver key with a clover-shaped top. I forgot how to breathe for a second. I knew that key. I gave it to her the last day of camp. It had come with a note, childish and full of promise. "This is the key to our secret hideout. Keep it safe until we go back." It had cost me 2 weeks of allowance and every ounce of courage I had as a 10-year-old. She wore it every day that summer, and now, decades later, there it was, resting just above her heart. I swallowed hard. Could this really be her? "Where did you get that necklace?" I asked, my voice trembling more than I wanted to admit. Her fingers curled instinctively around the charm, hiding it, but not before I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, pain, fear. I didn't push her. I just waited. She looked away again, but not before whispering, almost too softly to hear. It was a gift. The same rasp in her voice, the same softness, the same ache that used to fill the air between us when we sat on that dock. Legs in the water, hearts wide open. My chest tightened. It's her. It has to be her. But why won't she say it? What happened to her all these years? Why is she out here, alone? I wanted to ask everything, wrap her in warmth and demand the world give her answers. But instead I just sat there beside her, my heart caught between memory and reality, and the key, that tiny rusted key, dangled between us, unlocking something I hadn't felt in years. I didn't come back the next day with food or tea. This time I came with only one thing, the photograph, the one from the dock, the one where her laughter was frozen in time, and I, just a boy with tangled hair and sunburned cheeks, was staring at her like she was the only person who mattered. Because she was. Now she sat across from me in a torn coat, clutching a paper cup like it was the last thing keeping her anchored to the world. Her face was hollowed, lips cracked from the wind. But her eyes, God, her eyes were still hers. I took a deep breath and pulled the photo from my coat pocket. I held it out gently, like it might shatter if I moved too fast. Her gaze dropped to it slowly, and when she saw it, her entire body stiffened. I watched her fingers tremble as she reached out and took it from me, like she didn't believe what she was holding was real. A long silence passed, then her voice broke it, barely a whisper. "Where did you get this?" I didn't answer her question. I asked mine instead. "Are you Lena?" She froze. Tears welled in her eyes before she even looked up. And when she did, there was no more hiding in her expression. No more defenses, no more alley shadows to crawl into. Just her. Her lips parted, and her voice cracked like a dam finally giving way. "How did you recognize me?" I could barely speak past the lump in my throat. "Your eyes," I whispered, "and the key, and the way my chest aches when I look at you. Just like it used to." She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as silent sobs took over. I didn't touch her. I didn't rush her. I just sat there, breathing in the sound of the past coming undone. When she finally lowered her hands, her face was blotched and red. But I saw her, the girl from the dock, the one who disappeared, the one I thought I'd imagined more than remembered. "I didn't think anyone would ever say my name again," she said quietly. "Not like that." "You don't have to hide anymore," I told her. She closed her eyes, nodded. And just like that, the silence between us became something different. Not the silence of strangers, but the silence between two people who had found each other again after being lost far too long. We sat on the curb, the world passing us by in muffled footsteps and distant engines. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I waited, giving her the space she never had. Then Lena finally turned to me, the last remnants of tears still clinging to her lashes. "You want to know what happened?" she said softly. Not as a question, but a quiet surrender. I nodded. "My mom died when I was 13, she began. Cancer, fast and cruel. One day we were picking strawberries. The next I was holding her hand in a hospital bed, begging her not to leave. I felt the air shift, heavier now. I didn't dare interrupt. After she died, my father changed. I think he loved her more than he knew how to handle. He started drinking, then yelling, then hitting. Her voice didn't crack. It broke clean in two. I closed my hands into fists. One night he came home, and I knew I couldn't stay another minute. I grabbed a backpack, took the bus as far as I could go. I thought I could make it on my own. She gave a bitter smile. I was wrong. The wind tugged at her coat as she stared down the alley, like it held the rest of her story. I was picked up by social services, bounced from house to house. Some were okay, some were nightmares. I stopped unpacking my bags because I knew I wouldn't stay. I stopped talking too. It was easier not to care. I could see it now. Every bruise the world had left on her, not just the ones on skin, but the ones buried deep in the soul, layered with silence and survival. At 17, I aged out of the system. I had no diploma, no savings, no home. Just a name no one remembered and a necklace that reminded me of a summer I wasn't sure was real anymore. She touched the key gently. There were shelters, jobs, then no jobs, then the street. Some nights I'd pretend I was back at Pine Hill. I'd imagine your voice reading that stupid campfire ghost story. It was the only place I ever felt safe. My throat tightened. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw her not just as the girl I lost, but as the woman life had tried to break and failed. "You shouldn't have to carry this alone," I whispered. She shrugged. I had no one else. I reached out slowly, and this time, she didn't pull away. "You do now," I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city lights flickered outside my window, but all I saw was her face. The way she looked when she said she used to imagine my voice just to feel safe. I kept hearing her story on a loop. Every moment she was abandoned, every time she was hurt, and somehow, through it all, She still kept that key. The next morning I went back. Same alley, same corner. This time she looked up before I even sat down. "You came back again," she said softly. "I told you," I smiled. "You're not alone anymore." We didn't say much after that. We just sat there watching the city move around us like we were outside of time. Then I saw her take out an old worn wallet, edges frayed, barely held together. She opened it, searching for something. "I want to show you something," she said. From behind a faded bus pass and a folded receipt, she pulled out a tiny crumpled piece of lined notebook paper. The ink had faded, but I instantly recognized my own handwriting. Crooked, all caps, written with a blue gel pen, I thought was the coolest thing in the world back then. "When we grow up, let's live in a house by the ocean. You'll paint, I'll build stuff, and we'll eat ice cream whenever we want. Promise?" At the bottom, "Lena plus Daniel equals forever, even if we're old and wrinkly." I stared at the paper like it was a relic from another life. "You kept this?" I whispered. She nodded. It was the only thing that didn't feel like a lie. My chest ached in the best and worst way. All this time I thought the world had forgotten her. But maybe I was the one who forgot the promise first. She looked at me then, her voice quiet but steady. "Do you still want the house by the ocean?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes," I said. "And the ice cream. And the wrinkles." She laughed through her tears. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Lena smiled like she meant it. The promise hadn't been broken. It had just been waiting. I didn't want to push her, but I also couldn't bear the thought of leaving her in that alley another night. "Just for one night," I said gently. "A warm bed, a shower, and a door that locks." She hesitated. Her fingers played with the frayed edge of her coat, like she was weighing something heavy and invisible. Finally, she nodded. "I booked the hotel room under my name, just a few blocks from my office. Nothing extravagant, but clean and quiet." When we walked in, she looked around the space like it was foreign. Her eyes went straight to the corners, the windows, the shadows. She didn't say anything. I showed her where the bathroom was, how to use the card key, even pointed out the small safe in the closet. When I turned to say goodnight, she stood by the door, her hand hovering near the knob. "You'll be okay," I said. She gave a stiff nod. "Thank you." But as I walked down the hallway, I looked back, and I could still see the tension in her shoulders, like she was waiting for the worst. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My mind kept drifting to her. The next morning, I came by early. I knocked once, gently. There was a pause. Then the door creaked open a few inches. One of her eyes peeked through. "Just me," I said softly. She opened the door but didn't step back. Her eyes were tired, more than tired, worn. "Did you sleep at all?" I asked. She shook her head. "A little. I kept, checking the lock." She walked back into the room, leaving the door open. I followed her in. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I'm not used to silence," she said. "Not like that. It's too still." I kept thinking someone would come in. I felt something in my chest twist. She wasn't afraid of the room. She was afraid of what rooms like this had meant before. Doors that didn't protect, silence that wasn't safe, and nights that didn't end with sleep. "I know it's hard to trust walls again," I said gently. "But this lock, it's yours now. No one gets to come through it unless you say so." She didn't answer, but she looked at the door again. And this time, just for a second, her shoulders dropped. A breath released. Maybe not trust, but maybe the beginning of it. It was raining again when we stepped outside. Light drizzle, the kind that settles on your skin without asking permission. Lena kept her hood up, eyes low, as if the city might recognize her and take something away. I asked if she was hungry. She nodded once, almost embarrassed by it. We found a small diner 2 streets over, nothing fancy. Red leather booths, a jukebox in the corner, and a waitress who smiled without asking too many questions. I could feel Lena tense as we walked in, but I chose a booth near the back, away from the windows. When the menu arrived, she stared at it like it was a foreign language. "You can get anything," I said gently. She hesitated, then pointed to the tomato soup and grilled cheese. It arrived fast. She picked up the spoon with a kind of reverence, like the bowl might vanish if she moved too quickly. Her first bite was slow, cautious, but then something changed. Her eyes closed, her shoulders relaxed. For the first time, she looked warm. "How long has it been?" I asked quietly. "Since you had a hot meal like this?" She didn't lift her eyes. "A couple of years. Maybe more. Usually it's vending machines or leftovers from someone's trash." I didn't know what to say, so I just let the silence sit with us, unjudging. When she'd finished half the sandwich, I finally told her, "I tried Googling you last night." Her expression stiffened immediately. "Lena Thompson," I continued. "There's nothing. No school records, no social profiles, not even an old address." She looked down at her food. "I erased myself a long time ago," she said. "Or maybe the world just never bothered writing me down in the first place." My heart ached at that. "But I remember you," I said softly. She glanced up at me then, and for the first time in days, her eyes didn't just look tired. They looked alive. "I remember you, Lena, and I'm not going to forget again." We didn't go back to the hotel right away. Instead, we walked through the quiet streets, the kind that only appear after midnight, when the city exhales and the noise slips away. Lena stayed close but never quite beside me, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. When we got to the room, she stood by the window, her fingers grazing the curtain as if testing whether she was really inside or just dreaming it. She turned to me. "Do you want to know the truth?" she asked. "All of it?" I nodded. "Only if you want to tell me." She hesitated, then took off her coat, then her sweater. Her back faced me now, thin and fragile, and lined with scars. Some were long and faded. Others were newer, jagged like cracked glass. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "These," she said softly, "are what life left behind." She ran her fingers over one near her shoulder blade. "Group homes. One of the foster dads had a belt. Said it was discipline. Then the shelters, some of the women didn't like me. Said I smiled too much. So they fixed that." Her voice was even, detached. Like she'd told herself this story so many times it had stopped feeling like her own. "I survived, Daniel. I made it through everything. But everyone took something from me, a little piece at a time." I stepped closer but didn't touch her. I didn't want to treat her like something broken. When she turned to face me, I saw something raw in her eyes. Not shame, not pity, just exhaustion. "I don't have anything left to give," she whispered. And then I said it, quietly but with everything in me. "But I do. I can give something back." She blinked. "I can give you safety, rest, a second chance to breathe. I don't want anything from you, Lena. I just want you to know that you still deserve to be whole." She stared at me like no one had ever said those words to her before. Then slowly she stepped forward and leaned into me, cautiously, like testing the weight of trust, and I let her. We stood like that for a long time. No words exchanged, just the silence of someone finally being held without fear. Scars and all. The next morning hit like a storm. I barely made it through the revolving doors of my office before Gwen, my senior assistant, was waiting for me, arms crossed, tablet in hand, expression carved from stone. "We need to talk," she said, already walking toward the boardroom. Inside, the mood was tense. My core team, Gwen, Marcus, and a few others, sat around the table. No smiles, no pleasantries, just unease. Gwen was the first to speak. "Daniel, we've done our best to stay out of your personal life, but this woman you've taken in, Lena Thompson, there's no record of her anywhere. No ID, no employment history, no address. You're spending company time and resources helping someone we know nothing about." Marcus leaned forward. "Look, we're not heartless, but we need to ask, is she who she says she is, or is she using you?" The words cut deeper than I expected. I opened my mouth to respond, but stopped, because the truth was, I didn't know the full story either. I had no proof of who Lena was now, no paperwork, no resume, just a childhood memory, a necklace, and the way her voice cracked when she talked about sleeping with one eye open. And still, my heart didn't waver. "She's not using me," I said, my voice firm. "She's someone I knew a long time ago. Someone I lost." Gwen frowned. "People change, Daniel. Trauma changes them. You've built everything on discipline and vision. Don't let emotion blind you. Emotion? If they had seen what I saw last night, the scars, the trembling hands, the soft way she said my name like she wasn't sure she deserved to anymore, they wouldn't call it emotion. They'd call it human. I hear your concerns, I said finally, but my decision stands. She stays. She gets the help she needs. They exchanged glances. Gwen sighed. Then we'll hope your heart is right. So would I. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just fighting to build something new. I was fighting not to lose something I thought I'd never find again. She insisted on going alone. I need to do something myself, Lena said that morning, pulling her borrowed coat tight around her. I can't keep hiding behind you. I respected that. Still, I walked her to the gate, watched as she disappeared down the block, back straight, chin lifted, like she was holding her world together with invisible threads. She'd found a janitorial position at a local community charity. Modest pay, night shifts. But it was something, a place to start, a way to take back a little control. I waited hours. Then my phone buzzed. One message. Can we talk? When I arrived, she was already sitting on the bench outside the hotel, arms wrapped around herself. Her shoulders were hunched like they were trying to protect her from more than just the wind. They knew my name, she said quietly, before I even sat down. What happened? I asked, crouching in front of her. At first, they were nice. The woman said the job was mine, no problem. Then she looked at my application again. My name. Lena Thompson. Her face changed. Lena's voice cracked. She asked, "Are you that Lena Thompson?" Like I was a stain she just realized was on her clothes. My stomach dropped. They asked if I'd been arrested, if I had a history. They said people like me bring trouble, that the charity couldn't afford that kind of attention. I clenched my fists. But you've never even... She looked away. Doesn't matter. Rumors don't need truth to spread. By the time she walked out of the building, she said, a few employees were already whispering. One man pulled out his phone and snapped a photo. That was how it started. A few hours later, someone posted on a local forum, Millionaire Daniel Lewis's mystery woman is actually a runaway with a criminal past. There was no arrest, no record. But that didn't stop the comments, the speculation, the hate. I sat beside her, fury and helplessness tangled in my chest. I just wanted to clean floors, she whispered. Now I'm a headline I didn't ask for. I took her hand. You are not who they say you are. She looked at me, eyes hollow. I know, but who am I, Daniel? What's left of me that they haven't already ruined? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was going to find one, no matter what it took. It started with a single headline. Millionaire Daniel Lewis spotted with homeless companion. Who is she really? The photo was grainy. Lena walking beside me, her coat too big, hair windblown, eyes downcast. It was taken without our knowledge. Probably when we were walking back from the diner that night. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire. News outlets, gossip blogs, finance forums, everyone had something to say. Is she a former lover? A con artist? A secret mistress from the past? Sources say Daniel has lost control. Investors demand answers. Some articles called her brave. Most called her dangerous. By noon, my company's stock had dipped 5%. By evening, it was trending worldwide. Gwen burst into my office, face pale. You need to make a statement. Clarify that this has no connection to the company. Distance yourself before this goes further. Marcus added, just say you were helping someone in need. Briefly, make it clean. But nothing about this was clean. I looked at the headlines again. Homeless woman exploits tech mogul. From the streets to the penthouse. Schemer or survivor? They didn't see the girl who used to laugh beside me on the dock. They didn't see the scars on her back. They didn't see the woman who still checked hotel locks in the middle of the night. They saw a story, a scandal, something they could twist. I'm not stepping away, I said firmly. Gwen blinked. Daniel, this could cost us everything. No, I said, standing. What cost her everything was people looking away when she needed someone. I'm not going to be one of them. I walked out of that room, their voices chasing after me. But I didn't stop. Because this storm, these headlines, the whispers, the shame, they weren't just about Lena. They were a mirror, a reflection of a world that found it easier to mock pain than to understand it. And I'd let the world mock me before I let them erase her. They said I'd be committing professional suicide. You'll destroy your credibility. You'll alienate investors. You're throwing away your reputation for a woman who came from nothing. Maybe they were right, but I wasn't going to stay silent. Not this time. The press conference was held on a Thursday afternoon. Cameras lined the back wall. Every seat was filled. I stood behind the podium, heart pounding in my chest, Lena watching from a side door, hidden but listening. I cleared my throat. Then I spoke. "You've all seen the headlines," I began. "You've read the speculation. You've seen the photos. I'm here to tell you the truth." The room quieted. This woman, Lena Thompson, is not a scandal. She is not a con artist. She is not a homeless stranger who manipulated me. I paused, scanning the room. She's my past and my future. Gasps, flashbulbs, fingers typing furiously. She was my childhood best friend, the girl who held my hand on the dock every summer, the one who disappeared when the world failed her. And yes, she lived through unimaginable pain. She lost everything, but she never lost her dignity. I could feel my voice shake, but I didn't stop. She is strong, brave, and she has more integrity in her silence than most people have in a lifetime of speeches. A longer pause. I don't care what it costs. I stand with her because when the world tried to erase her, she survived. And now I won't let anyone make her invisible again. The room was silent, stunned. Then someone clapped. Another followed. By the end of the hour, Number I Stand With Her was trending worldwide. Messages flooded in, some angry, but many full of support. Donations poured into women's shelters. Letters came from survivors saying, "I see myself in her." When I found Lena afterward, she was still sitting where I left her, eyes wide, hands trembling. "You meant it," she whispered. I took her hand. "Every word." She looked at me like she hadn't been seen in years. And for the first time, she didn't look away. Weeks passed. The headlines quieted. The stock recovered. The noise faded. But Lena stayed. She still flinched when car doors slammed too loud. Still double-checked the locks at night. Still moved carefully through the world as if afraid something might break beneath her feet. So I built her something that couldn't. Not a gesture, not charity, a home. Not just any home, but hers. I remembered the drawing. She had shown it to me one summer at Pine Hill. Crayon lines, sun in the corner, a crooked house with flowers too big for the yard. I'd teased her for putting a glass table outside. "What if it rains?" I'd said. And she replied, "Then it'll shine like diamonds." I kept that memory tucked away for 20 years. And now I used it. The land was just outside the city. Quiet. Trees lined the edge, wind always moving through the leaves like a lullaby. I hired the best architect I knew, but gave him a child's sketch as the blueprint. A wraparound porch, a lavender garden out front, a wooden swing hanging from a tree just off the path, and yes, even a glass table in the backyard. When I brought Lena to see it for the first time, she stood frozen in the driveway, eyes wide. "You built this," she whispered. I nodded. "Piece by piece, from your drawing." She stepped onto the porch like she didn't trust the wood to hold her. When she saw the lavender, her hands covered her mouth. And when she saw the swing, she dropped to her knees and cried. I sat beside her in the dirt, not saying a word. Finally, she looked at me, messy, shaking, radiant. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because everyone took something from you," I said. "It's time someone gave something back." She reached for my hand and held it tight. That house wasn't just walls and windows. It was proof that even after everything, after loss, after pain, after the world told her she didn't belong, she had a place now. A place called home. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. I had a meeting across town. Just an hour. I asked if she'd be okay. Lena smiled, nodded. "Go," she said. "I'm safe here. I promise." But an hour later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, barely audible. "Daniel!" It was Lena. I dropped everything. When I reached the house, I found her curled up on the floor of the sunroom, arms wrapped tightly around herself, trembling. The swing outside moved in the breeze untouched. The lavender garden was still in bloom, but inside it felt like winter. Lena! I knelt beside her, heart racing. She couldn't speak, just gasped for air, hands clutching her chest like the walls were closing in. I'm here, I whispered, pulling her into my arms. You're okay. You're safe. Breathe with me. It took minutes for her to calm enough to speak, and even then, her voice was raw, like it had clawed its way out. I, I was cleaning up, and I found an old blanket in the closet. Same pattern, same weight, as the one they used to throw over me in that shelter. Her voice broke. I don't know what happened. It was like I was there again, back in that room. The smell, the cold, the fear. I couldn't stop it. I held her tighter. You don't have to explain. But I do, she sobbed. I was doing so well. And then this wave came over me and I couldn't breathe. How can I ever be normal if my mind keeps dragging me back? She looked at me then, tears streaking her face. Aren't you tired of holding broken things? I exhaled, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. I'm not here to fix you, Lena. I'm here to heal with you. She blinked. I've spent my life building walls, protecting myself from failure, from grief, from letting anyone get too close. You think you're the only one haunted by the past? You're not. I touched her chest gently. It's not just your past that's healing. It's mine too. Through you. We sat there in silence, hearts still racing, but steadying together. Because healing doesn't happen in perfect arcs. It comes in breaths, in breakdowns, in someone refusing to walk away when everything feels broken. And I wasn't going anywhere. The mail had started piling up on the kitchen counter, catalogs, bills, donation requests, all addressed to me. But one envelope was different. It was handwritten, edges worn, no return address. Just Lena's name in neat, careful letters. She stared at it for a long time. Do you want me to open it? I asked. She shook her head. No, I need to. Her fingers were steady, but her eyes weren't. She peeled it open, pulled out a single folded page and began to read. I watched her expression shift. Confusion, disbelief, and then something else entirely. Something softer. She handed me the letter, her hands trembling just slightly. Read it, she whispered. I did. Lena, you probably don't remember me. We were in the same shelter once, for just a few nights. I never knew your full story, and you never asked about mine. But I remember you. You didn't speak much. You just sat near the corner window and stared out like you were somewhere far away. But you always gave up your spot in line. You shared your blanket when it was cold. You never complained, not once. At the time, I thought you were silent because you were broken, but now I think you were holding yourself together the only way you could. Your silence gave me hope. If someone like you could survive, maybe I could too. I just wanted you to know, I got out. I have a job now, a room with a lock. I volunteer at the same shelter every Sunday, and sometimes I sit by that window and think of you. Thank you, even if you never meant to save anyone. You did. When I looked up, Lena's eyes were full of tears, but her chin was lifted, her shoulders straight. There was no shame in her expression this time, just pride. I wasn't trying to save anyone, she said, her voice shaky. But you did, I replied, just by surviving. She folded the letter carefully as if it were made of something sacred. Then she smiled. A real one. Small, earned. For the first time, Lena didn't feel like someone who had barely made it through. She felt like someone who had led others out. A survivor, a spark, a quiet kind of hero. She never wanted a grand wedding, no velvet aisle, no crystal chandeliers, no camera crews buzzing overhead. Just a quiet place, a few close friends, and a moment that belonged only to us. We held the ceremony in the lavender garden, her garden, the same one she used to kneel beside in silence, hands buried in the soil like she was stitching her soul back together. That day she stood beneath the old oak tree in a white dress, not the kind you find in a designer boutique, but one she found at a second-hand store and stitched with her own hands. No diamonds, no lace, just soft fabric and steady seams. But God, she looked radiant. White didn't mean purity. Not for her. It meant resilience. It meant light after the dark. It meant standing tall when the world tried to bury you. As I waited for her beneath the swing, my heart raced. Not with fear, but with awe. Because here was a woman who had nothing, and yet somehow carried everything. When she reached me, she whispered, "Are you sure?" I smiled. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The ceremony was simple. A few friends. Gwen, who eventually came around. Marcus, still skeptical, but present. Even the woman who wrote the letter from the shelter came, standing in the back with tears in her eyes. When it was time for vows, Lena surprised me. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I used to think love was a door I didn't deserve to knock on," she said. "But you handed me the key." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "You saw me when I didn't want to be seen. You didn't fix me. You walked beside me while I learned how to fix myself." She looked up, eyes shining. "So this dress isn't about being perfect. It's about being alive. And I promise to keep showing up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." When I placed the ring on her finger, her hands trembled, but they didn't retreat. We kissed beneath the oak tree, lavender in bloom around us, the scent rising with the breeze like a blessing. And in that moment, the girl from the alley was gone. All that remained was the woman in white, standing tall, unbroken, and finally home. We returned to Pine Hill in the spring. The town looked smaller than I remembered. Fewer trees, narrower streets, the campgrounds long since closed. But the lake was still there, quiet and endless, just like it was the summer we made our promise. Lena stood beside me at the edge of the dock, her hand wrapped in mine. "This place doesn't feel like a ghost anymore," she whispered. "It feels like a beginning." We walked through the town, past the old market, the diner with the leaning sign, the empty library that once held our secret notes between bookshelves. Everything had changed, and yet everything felt familiar. Then we found it, an overgrown lot behind the old community center, fenced off, forgotten. But to us, it wasn't just a patch of dirt. It was the spot, the one we'd pointed to as kids, saying, "Right here, this is where our house will be." Lena smiled as she stepped into the tall grass. "Looks like we're a little late." "Not too late," I said, because this time, we weren't building a house for ourselves. We were building a home for others. 6 months later, the doors of Lena's light opened. A women's shelter, safe, warm, and dignified. Bedrooms with locks, showers with real water pressure, a garden out back where lavender grew wild, and in the common room beneath a skylight, a glass table that sparkled when it rained. Lena insisted on every detail. She painted the walls herself. She helped to lay tile. She read bedtime stories to the children during their first night, her voice shaking, but strong. The town tried to understand. Then it began to support. Old neighbors donated. The mayor showed up with a plaque. Even the gossip column ran a headline that made me smile. "From shadows to shelter, Pine Hill's own returns to build a light." One afternoon, I found Lena sitting on the porch steps, watching a little girl draw in the dirt. "She reminds me of me," she said quietly. "All of them do." I sat beside her. "You gave them more than a roof," I said. "You gave them proof that broken things still bloom." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting gold over the building that now bore her name, I realized something. Pine Hill wasn't just our past anymore. It was where hope had taken root, and this time, it was her light leading the way. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet you only hear in the middle of nowhere. Just the soft hum of wind in the trees, the distant call of an owl, the creak of the porch swing beneath us. Lena sat beside me, her feet curled beneath her, wrapped in the same blanket she once feared. Now it was warm, familiar, safe. The porch light cast a soft glow over her face, and in that moment, I saw every version of her at once. The laughing girl on the dock, the silent figure in the alley, the brave woman in white, and the fierce soul who built something beautiful from all her broken pieces. She caught me staring. What? She asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. I looked down, then back at her, heart fuller than I ever thought it could be. I loved you when we were kids, I said, but I didn't know what love really meant back then. She turned to me, eyes shining in the dark. I loved the way you laughed, I continued, the way you used to color outside the lines and defend bees like they were your pets. But now I love you for more. For what? She whispered. For surviving, I said softly. For staying soft in a world that tried to harden you. For keeping the key. For coming back. Her eyes welled with tears, not the kind born from sadness, but the kind that only come when something long frozen finally melts. She looked down, then reached into her pocket. From it, she pulled that tiny silver key, still rusted, still whole. She placed it in my hand. I thought I lost you, she said. Every year, every night on the street. I thought you were just a dream I made up to survive. Her voice broke. But the truth is, I never really left you. Not in here. She touched her chest, right over her heart. Not once. I pulled her close, resting my forehead against hers. You found your way back, I whispered. That's what matters. The stars blinked above us, quiet witnesses to everything we had lost and everything we had reclaimed. We didn't need to say anything more, because some love stories don't start over. They continue, quietly, bravely, exactly where they left off.